2019, Dr. Peter Phillips managed to steer back a challenge from Peter Bunting for the presidency of the PNP. It was a caustic contest that caused the PNP a lot of damage and turmoil in the years to come. Even though many persons were of the belief that he had won that contest quite fairly, their question was whether or not he could go on to win the next general election. They got their answer on September 3rd, after the conclusion of the parliamentary elections, when the Jamaica Labour Party handed Dr. Peter Phillips and the PNP a resounding defeat. Many believed at the time that even though it took a year before we got to the September 3rd general elections after that caustic political campaign in the PNP, Peter Phillips had struggled and failed to bring unity to a divided PNP organization, as the members continued to have disagreements and disputes among each other. And these disputes often was displayed in the public space. Many are of the opinion that Dr. Peter Phillips lacked the necessary charisma and had no appeal among the youth. Many also warned him for 6 months that the PNP would suffer a massive defeat at the hands of Andrew Holness and the JLP. Many of the persons had said that the defeat that would be handed to the PNP would be so unique and distinct that it has never been seen in 3 decades. Peter Phillips never paid much attention to these predictions nor warnings. He pushed them aside, especially after he narrowly defeated former Central Manchester Member of Parliament Peter Bunting in 2019. Many persons have described this as a divisive presidential campaign for the leadership of the PNP. The divisions and the damage of the statements that were made by the members of both camps, that is the Rise United team and the One PNP team, would have been made public and would have been splashed across social media platforms. It is still believed that many persons in the PNP are still hurting from the 2019 campaign. Phillips was helpless to rein in his One PNP supporters, while Peter Bunting seemed similarly clueless about preventing his Rise United supporters from expressing their caustic statements against their opponents in public. On September 7, 2019, Peter Phillips managed to issue a sound beating to Peter Bunting on his 59th birthday, but it was just by a mere 76 votes. This race was so close, and it was also proof that the opposition party was hopelessly divided and would not be a factor in the upcoming elections. The electorate was very clear, and they saw right through the pretense of the PNP. They were pretending to be united leading up to the September 3rd general elections. And this was following the caustic presidential campaign. And according to many persons had made up their minds at least 6 months before the election date that they would be voting for the Jamaica Labour Party. That the experienced politician Dr. Peter Phillips made things worse for himself and the PNP on the morning of the election when he was asked what he would do if the PNP were not successful at the polls. Many persons were still casting their ballots, yet Dr. Peter Phillips chose to make a huge mistake. Every other party leader before Dr. Peter Phillips, even those who have lost many elections, proved to be confident on the day of election. It was Edward Siaga, P.J. Patterson, Portia Simpson-Miller, and Michael Manley, among others, and they would have convinced the reporters that it was still early and that they in fact expected to be victorious at the end of the polls. But in a new fashion and a new development, Dr. Peter Phillips told the reporters that if he lost the elections, he would resign as PNP president and opposition leader. This response came as a shock to many persons, and even comrades too, with some even saying that this general was surrendering and abandoning his troops in the midst of battle. What unfolded on election night left Dr. Peter Phillips with no choice but to resign. And he will be reflecting for a very long time about his reasons for having made a statement in that fashion. He never allowed many persons the chance to even see if the PNP would win. He threw in the towel before anything had even started on September 3rd. Peter Bunting was never even given the chance to assume the leadership of the PNP because Dr. Peter Phillips managed to steer off his challenge. The PNP would still have lost the elections, but the damage may have been less if Peter Bunting was the leader. Many persons are also of the opinion that his legacy as a high-performing minister of government in several PNP administrations have been damaged by his stubbornness and lack of willingness to give up his post to another leader. He thought he had a right to be prime minister. This is the view shared by one comrade. In the end, however, Dr. Peter Phillips, like many other politicians before him, came across as being less than magnanimous when 6 months of opinion polls clearly stated that he would be soundly beaten, that he did not appeal to youth, and that he failed to unite his party. He has gone down in history as the only PNP president not to have become head of the Jamaica government. After Peter Phillips, People's National Party, a once highly regarded political organization, not just in Jamaica but regionally and internationally, has been viewed as one of the largest losers in politics in this year. The party of Norman Manley, one of the intellectuals and one who spoke out for the poor, the working class, and Jamaicans as a whole, has lost its way in a large way. Now, how does one explain the PNP losing the 2016 election by a single seat in 2016, to lose 4 years later by almost 35 seats in 2020? These margins of victory has not been seen since Patterson's PNP defeated Edward Seaga as 52-8 in 1993 and 50-60 in 1997. Based on numerous statements that have been made, the voting public had obviously grown tired of the PNP and viewed the party and many of its long-standing Member of Parliaments as non-performers who were only concerned about victory. In the 4 years since Holness led the JLP to victory in 2016, Jamaicans have come to see both him and the JLP as top performers.